Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with the 173rd episode of our first YouTube run through the House of Light expansion for Book of Hours, playing as the Archaeologist. This should be the next video after the extended length Salon, which I'm hoping wasn't too much of a burden. Alright. Now, eventually one of these are going to go into the sleep spot, but what I want to work out first is where I'm using my remaining elements of the soul. So I'll... there isn't really any... there isn't any reason for me to like rush on this. As long as I have it done before the end of the day, I should be fine. It did also occur to me that given that... I sort of already know that we're going to be giving up some elements of the soul overnight, so I'm wondering there may be some value in using the core or the health at Natan's desk and just using some of the surplus to overcome... In fact, we don't even really need the storm for that, to be honest, so I'll keep it as an option, let's say. But let's wait to see what we get from our existing memories. And... some of these are a little tricky, so just as a quick recap. So Great Signs and Great Scars has effectively become a bit like Door and Wall. So we don't have anything... We just don't have anything that's that applies. Actually, Door and Wall isn't the best example because they both have knock. But at this point here, Desires and Dissolutions, I think, was the last Grail element that we needed to push up. Now, Pentiments and Precursors will probably be the one that I take up, and then probably Resurgences and Emergences. Again, a lot of this really hinges on what memories I have available to me at the time. Edict's Liminal is... oh, I can't remember. I think I'm out of Moth stuff to upgrade as well, so I believe Edict's Liminal is another freebie. Similarly with the Moth. I may actually want to work out a kind of a queue just to make sure that I'm not... So yeah, like Resurgences and Emergences will probably be doubled up with Great Signs and Great Scars, although I suppose that sort of depends on... Oh, hang on. No, I think I actually need to upgrade Sea Stories now that I think of it. I'm going to have a think on that. Okay, so... Moth is a question mark. Disciplines of the Scar definitely is one that's a freebie, so... Ragged Crossroads, Ragged Crossroads to start. And then it looks like either Watchman's Paradoxes or Meniscate Reflections. Surges and Exsanguinations, so the Heart will probably find some use for same story with Stitching and Binding. What I may do, because this was an extra one, I may actually take the Sky and apply it to Furs and Feathers. Just because I know that's going to be sort of coming up short, and I believe... the only other Sky that I have right now would be... yeah, Commandments for the Preservation of All That Exists. Okay, but yeah, so I mean, first of all, we'll digest the lessons that we got from the Salon, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do with the books. We should also have an offer from Oriflammes before too long. Unhatched Hymns. Hymns attributed to St. Lucia the Eyeless, patron of glassworkers, and name of the hour called Meniscate. The hymns venerate every sanctioned hour, celebrating them as the sun undivided, but also suggesting that each hour may become the next, madrigad to watchman, watchman to wolf, and so on. The hymn of the phases celebrates the Meniscate from whom we do not turn, for the truth which is beauty, the beauty which is truth, and the perfect balance between the two. The hymn of the Reflections, more puzzlingly, celebrates the Meniscate as the sister of Janus, mother of Shadow, whose visage wondrous in emptiness can reveal all truths. Okay. We've got the putrefactions and calcinations. So... I suppose the first thing I should work out is the status of this Grail element. Actually, I guess the first thing I can check is to see if Sea Stories has been committed. Okay, so it hasn't. That kind of interests me because I don't think I put it on my list. Aha! All right. No, I see exactly what's happened here. Okay, so I've sort of misled myself a little bit. So I had a batch of birdsong entries. Sorry for the alert. So I had a bunch of birdsong entries which I couldn't actually figure out what I wanted to do with them. So if I just take a quick look here, I had effectively a bunch of stuff which was committed for Ithistry. And again, this is sort of the accumulation of a number of different decisions over the course of the playthrough. But we've got Glacier Lightsmithing, which I know is going to be going into Ithistry. And similarly, Bells and Braziers is going to be going into Ithistry, and Glassblowing and Vessel Crafting, similar story. And there's a number of these where over the course of doing the playthrough, I've more or less figured out where I want to put these things. So through process of elimination, I think this actually has completed the birdsong branch for me, but I haven't actually figured out a ranking for everybody yet. So we've got Rhyme and Remembrance, Sand Stories, Sea Stories, Path and Pilgrim, Leaves and Thorns, and Sky Stories. Now, a couple of these have already been decided for me, so I think at some point I decided to take Sky Stories the whole way. So that's at 9, and then I think Leaves and Thorns is also in sort of their top position. So really what we're looking at here, I think it's 4 through 7 if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So the 2 are spoken for here. So what I really want to do is figure out among Rhyme and Remembrance, Sand Stories, Sea Stories, and Path and Pilgrim, who gets the low numbers and who gets the high numbers. So we might as well do that now because we've actually got some elements of the soul to play with. So Path and Pilgrim is currently at 5, so that's not a candidate for 4. Sea Stories is currently at 3, so theoretically applying Great Signs and Great Scars could get me to bring that up. I will also note that we've got, where was it? The Voyages of Furnishing of Oriel and the Kerishim Portalan. So in theory I could apply more, but on the other hand, there's a bunch of these which also require moons, so I could just free those up as free agents. So anyway, Sea Stories is available for anything. Rhyme and Remembrance is at 4, so that's one where we're sort of like, okay, that may or may not go any further. Sand Stories, that's sitting at a 3. Now, one thing that's sort of nice about the Sand Stories is that there are a number of Rose texts that I can use that for. Okay. So I guess the only thing I've really learned out of this, between Rhyme and Remembrance, Sand Stories, Sea Stories, and Path and Pilgrim, is that Path and Pilgrim currently can't go in number 4. Now, I suppose the first observation I would make here is that I'm going to want to use Winter for Putrefactions and Calcinations. So basically there's kind of a competition between Rhyme and Remembrance and Putrefactions and Calcinations. So let me pencil in Rhyme and Remembrance for position 4. And then that would mean that Sand Stories, Sea Stories, and Path and Pilgrim are all competing for 5. Now, if Path and Pilgrim just stays where it is, and there's a couple of arguments for that, simply because I've got other uses for the scale, at least I think I still do. Rose, sort of same argument as the other ones. So let's say if Path and Pilgrim were to be at 5, that does mean that Sea Stories and Sand Stories, that does mean that those are potentially going quite a way. But I think I feel comfortable enough to say that having settled on Rhyme and Remembrance in position 4, I think it would be fair to say that I can at least apply the 2 Great Signs and Great Scars to Sea Stories. Which of course means that the Pentiments and Precursors was a little wasted, but I can it's a sunk cost at this point, so it's not a big deal. So let me just change my note here. See. So Edict's Liminal is going to go to Resurgences and Emergences. We already covered that. Inks of Power, I have already dealt with. So the last questions here would be Disciplines of the Scar, which at this point I don't think we have anything else to apply. So that will go... So our options are Ragged Crossroads. Yeah, it's just Ragged Crossroads. Okay. Obviously, that's later on. And then surgeries and exsanguinations. So both stitching and binding and surgeries and exsanguinations had heart. The heart I was looking for, so one's was herbs and infusions. Actually seems like I... Oh, no, here we go. Yeah. So herbs and infusions, Magaphine Mysteries, and Edicts Inviolable. So I'm thinking maybe for Edicts Inviolable... given that that one's a fairly high one, maybe I want to level that one up. And then stitching and binding I can apply to furs and feathers. Yeah. Okay, again, I realize that writing in a notebook, it's not the most compelling visual information. Excuse me. But I've got a game plan now. So, one of the easy answers here is just to take the C stories and move it up. One of the things that I would normally want to try and do is push this up as high as I can. Unfortunately, I don't think I have the 6 required for Edicts Inviolable. So if I did 1, 2... 3, well, maybe 4, 5. Interesting. And then if we use the old wound, that's 6. So wasn't exactly where I was planning on going with this, but it certainly is a lot easier than applying C stories to the problem. So here we will do... Edicts Inviolable. Just going to take a minute here, make sure I'm not missing anything obvious. So yeah, I could have used the Curious Hunch earlier, but then of course this Salon would have been done, so I wouldn't have had the memory. Okay. I think I'll give up the core in this case. When I thought I'd understood, I'd only begun. And I will take a minute to update my notes, but... now I actually made a little bit of a mistake there because I was also going to clear out the Ivory book. But I don't think that will be too much of a problem either way. I'll use Shapt in this case. This seems like a weird choice, but the fix for that is I'll take the Mop and Bucket to clean up the... Mop and Bucket is always the best way to clean up Theoplasm. I'm actually wondering if I can get away with Fusine. That's probably going to try and read it. But what I really wanted to see here was... Okay, so if I need 5 heart... Trying to see if I can get away giving up. Yeah, fair enough. So that now means I need 6. Which, I mean, surgeries and exsanguinations kind of covers all of it. Of course. I'm limited on my elements of the soul. Should have thought of that. You'd think by this point I would remember which skills apply for removing Theoplasma. The thing is that I know which icon to look for. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it looks like quenchings and quellings is my answer here. I don't quite think I can do it, but let's not rule out the possibility. So that gives me 4. Well, if I add the health, I'll still need the mop and... Actually, you know what? I wonder if Fusine lets me... Yep. So I can still apply the knock. Conic Theoplasma. This book suffered the attention of one of the chilly names or hours, perhaps even a god from nowhere. The DeWolf method. Some credit it to Gideon, others to Ava. So, if you're wondering why I'm allowing a few of these elements of the soul to sort of lapse overnight, it's mostly just these. Some of these are things that I was going to do in the next day anyway. So at this point, waiting until morning just means that's a minute that's going to be taking up a desk, and I'll still be down the element of the soul. So for a couple of these things, I'm getting a little more relaxed in terms of giving up the elements of the soul. What would be nice is if I could somehow get the stitching and binding and savage him. Like, if I could just hang on to these long enough that I could level up furs and feathers. Actually, you know what? In for a penny, in for a pound. Let's take the Practic Garden dummy. We'll redo the old wound here. And then... I need to figure out which of these memories I want to keep. Foresight's really the only option here, so we'll hang on to that. And on the odd chance that we have some time in the morning, I will try and sneak in one more level up. But again, I think we're just a few seconds short. There's a similar argument, by the way, to some of the stuff that I said before. So I think, just given the way that it works with the Sweet Bones, if you spend a tuppence at the Sweet Bones to restore the shaft overnight, obviously that's silly. But if you work at the Sweet Bones, you know, working overnight does get you the 6 pence, which, of course, losing the element of the soul, you can pay that back. So net, you do 4 pence, but... as twitchy and sort of optimization focused as I can sometimes get on some of these things, some of the other ones are enough for me to just sort of say, it's like, okay, that's a little too much. So I don't, I'm not trying to do a fully optimized playthrough. I just kind of like taking the opportunities that I can when they come up. I really should finish these 2 areas where I can. But I think the focus for today is going to be on lessons. So let's have a think about what we're going to do with all of these. Sorry, I'm just going to take a minute here to clear out some of the notes. So what I want to try and do with these, it's not just, so I've already got where I'm going to be applying these, but I want to work out exactly how many memories I'm going to need for So for sea stories, for instance, I'm going to need 7 Grail and Moon. For Edict's Liminal, so that was going to go to Resurgences and Emergences, so that's just a simple matter of Grail and Moth, but of course the Grail conflicts with the sea stories, so... we have Disciplines the Scar, Ragged Crossroads. Now that one might help me out a little bit. So things like the Contradiction have a moon aspect, but I'm presumably I'm going to be able to avoid most of those conflicts. So that's a 3 edge and... edge in winter. And then stitching and binding is Furs and Feathers. And that's, I believe, 3 scale and knock. Sorry, scale and sky. Okay, so that actually gives me quite a bit to work with. So one of the things I'm thinking of here, the music on its own should be enough to cover us for the Furs and Feathers. Sea Stories is going to be the big focus, though. So let's actually get the... we'll get all the Grail and Moon that I can right up front. And then I'm also going to go and assume that I can get everything I want leveled up today. And then we'll reevaluate when the time comes. So a lot of Triss that I just pulled away. Actually, a lot of Triss that I pulled away for no reason. So this would be, if I can use all of the elements of the soul, this would be what I need to set aside to make that work. So what I'll do now is I'll set out to get as many... So this will be all about the Grail and the Moon memories that I can get. And I will use other means to get those, but... Alright, so Confounding Parable... Can't remember if I did Book of Thrones already, but... Salt. I lost count, so I'm going to need to... Actually, you know what? Let's just do that now. So 1, 2, 3... Okay, so 4. Leaving this aside for now. But we've already used up the Fusine. Six. And I think we're short 1. Forge, Lantern, Moth. Yeah. I can live with that though, because I know we will be getting a Beguiling Melody from music. Okay, so Caller's Desk. I mean, I guess I'm looking for Moth at this point, but at Caller's Desk I'm actually going to go for Glimmerings. And the reason for that is it's a winter memory that I know that Denzel's not going to wind up eating with his own actions. Okay, so the next step is going to be to try and get some music down. So Applebright Euphonies, that'll get me the Beguiling Melody. I'm thinking I'm not going to have that many more. Yeah. Okay. Beguiling Melody was definitely the top priority. Let's do... I can never remember. I don't think this makes music. Yeah. Right. It's because of the Ascendant Harmony that I keep thinking that. I know I keep thinking of painting as like silent music is kind of the implication here, but the problem is that while that's a nice little heuristic for keeping things straight in my head, it's actually terrible for crafting. I think Daniel Dennett might have called something like that a boom crutch, like one of those things you kind of rely on to support your idea, but it actually winds up helping. It winds up leading you down a bad path. Okay. Why can't I find my music? Here we go. I think the Wistful Air will actually do the trick for me here. Do I even want to try anything else for music? So we're short the cheerful ditty, but I think I will have enough to move forward. Yeah, so we'll leave it at that, and we'll see what the conversation brings us. And it's a cloudy day, which will be good for the moon aspect. Okay, Oriflammes, established 1776, Sense Sign Sciences. Dear librarian, we would like to offer you this opportunity to purchase, on Matthias and the Amethyst Imago, an account of an occult romance. A certain Para, son of Aaron, claims to have written this in a single night as part of his initiation to the Damascene branch of the House of Leith, that order of immortals who rejected their past and future. Quite a costly one, it turns out. Speak to Denzel, he might even reply. I'm actually noticing that I'm hurting a bit in terms of the Spintria, but we should be able, with another Pneuma, we should be able to get some payment. The skill is now level 7. Its power aspects have also increased. Okay. So we don't have the memories yet to kind of get going on our big plans, but we've got the wheels in motion. If I want, I could sort of repurpose the consider verb for generating another memory, but that strikes me as a bit more of a frustration than anything. I don't think I will have a use for the Foresight today. I think we're going for Edge and Winter for the Disciplines of the Scar. But of course we couldn't have anticipated at the time, so... And one thing I haven't quite done yet, so I do normally do a little bit of gardening, but oh, that'll help us for the winter. He does a lot with silence, this man. The problem with the direct approach to theoplasmic attenuation is that if we call on any of the hours, we may end up theoplasmed worse than when we started, so we need to go carefully. Okay, so Quenchings and Quellings, I believe I've put... Or no, hang on. Quenchings and Quellings is the one that I've used and has been committed, so... I'll just stick you here. And move gingerly while the pain lasts. Okay. Again, the temptation is to plow straight into Natan's desk, but I'll get by without using it. We'll have a bunch of reading to do. I realize we're just at the 30-second mark, but I know there was also a lot of planning, so we'll go a bit over. We'll read these entries here, and then we'll sort of do all the leveling in earnest at the start of the next broadcast. The Serenity of the Black Wood, an allegorical history of the House of Leith, which it is here implied was inspired by the centipede. Serrano Blackwood is an occult alias to this day. The proverbial footloose gathers travelers in a wood and leads them through, but abandons them part way. They find themselves beset by glorious monsters. The travelers discover they can survive if they close their eyes. They adopt a closed eye as their sign, and that they can go unnoticed if they drink from the clear, cold streams. But they never forget that proverbial footloose the centipede. They never forget that proverbial footloose the centipede, but they never forgive her either. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. The Book of Thrones, a legend of the Shadowless Empire, transcribed by Alexander Peterhans from Annals at a Secret Shrine in Anatolia. In the first and greatest history, a subject of the Shadowless Empire of Persia travels to the west, to the kingdom of the Persids. There he becomes a protege of the tutelary Persid deity, the Scarred Man, who lives in the dark. He returns after 7 years to put his skills at the service of the Shadowless Empire, becoming their golden general. After many years of peace, the heirs of the Persids move against the King of Kings and the Shadowless Empire. The Golden General will not take up arms against the blood of his mentor until the King of Kings whispers a great secret of betrayal in his ear. He breaks his sword, forswears his oath to both the Empire and the Scarred Man, and enters the temple behind the world, leaving his life behind. So you may find another purpose for that contradiction. A Manual for Departure. The author, who identifies itself as the Jekadu, claims to be one of the great hooded princes of the Land of the River. The style is informal, even chatty. No, these doors shouldn't be recorded, but if we had only recorded things before we'd had to leave the Fifth History, we would be in a much better state. So here I am writing it down, and if you don't like it, you can sanction me. The Manual for Departure lists a number of strategies, occult, martial, and political, for quick escapes. Many are irrelevant, obsolete, or enigmatic, but the manual does include a number of powerful techniques for opening portals. Why did I think a secret threshold was going to help? Well, I guess it does help with sea stories, though. No, it doesn't, because it's moon, not... I must have thought that this was a... Oh, hang on. This is why I got it wrong. All right, inconvenient, but I think we'll be able to get by. The Orchid Transfigurations, A Birth, the second volume of the compilation of quasi-Rosicrucian allegories, supposedly by Robert Flood. This is in the original Latin. Flood, or pseudo-Flood, suggests alignments between the alchemical tradition of Rubidoux and the older Grail traditions, through the Pine Knight's quest for the Cinnabar Cup. Seek the cup in the birthing bed, the Pine Knight is told. The midwife at the birthing bed, to his amazement, is the Mountain Mother. In a fit of awe, he both gelds and flays himself. The vigilant storm bursts joyfully from the remains. 3 flowers hath the tree. Ernestine Peterhans records her observations of the growths of trees and flowers around the isle, and the omens and portents she attempts to draw from them, particularly the yew tree in Earl Brian's meadow, whose flowerings are sometimes eccentric. Ernestine observes that in the years when the tree flowers black, troubling secrets arise. When it flowers red, war and fires follow, and that no DeWolf heir has ever been born in a year where it flowers white. Ernestine attempts to use the tree's growth to advantage in her business affairs, but it fails. She is evidently very concerned when Hendrik de Wolf's grandson Giles runs off with the pale trollop Hafren in a year when the tree flowers white. She begins to fear she has entirely misinterpreted all the relevant omens. She is deeply concerned for the continuation of the DeWolf line and prays for Giles' return. I'll be humming this for a while, and so will anyone who happens by. Harsh on the tongue. One goes here. Let it rise in head and heart. From History to Eternity, a contraband manual of the Inks of Revelation, the author explains in a brief foreword that she is a high-ranking officer of an agency of the duties, and that though she supports its mission, she has concerns about the long-term consequences of its work. All histories are braided into a golden loop, a shining ascent to eternity. I'd never imagined I could be afraid that there might be too few truths. I could be wrong, but I'd like to leave at least one door ajar. Ichor Auroral can be brewed into an Incastum Terminale associated with the Second History, using Inks of Revelation techniques with Rose aspect. The author warns that this is exceptionally difficult, since these techniques aren't aligned with Rose, but that's why I'm hoping the door will stay ajar, even once all the others are closed. I wish you luck. And finally, Glimmerings, an anonymous prison diary written by a dreamer convicted of oniric irresponsibility and confined to the Cucurbit. The prisoner is plainly terrified and bewildered by their situation and has been unable to wrangle a coherent explanation out of anyone, but the dreams keep coming and they keep writing them down. Snow, broken mirrors, half-heard sky music, flowers of white, red, and black, a blood-streaked winter dawn, the most notorious signifiers of oniric risk, fantastically vivid and detailed. No wonder they were locked up. Their final recorded dream is of a worm jewel beneath Brandkrug Isle, which they open with a key carved from their fingerbone. Alright, so we've got... the funny thing here is, I think the only thing we have enough to fully go forward with is one round of sea stories. But what I really need to do here is just work out enough to get me two upgrades, so that deals with the 1 minute, and that's basically where I generate my next batch of memories. So what I'll do here is I'll leave the episode at this point. I'll definitely follow up on the next one. So that I can, I mean, if nothing else, taking a few weeks off, I'm not going to remember these plans, so it gives me a good reason to follow up on another episode, although at some point I need to stop recording these. But yeah, so we'll actually put some of this into play, and then, excuse me, we'll sort of pick through the remains and see what makes sense in terms of leveling up sort of the remaining items. Clouds really help me out here, by the way, just because any surplus that I have from leveling up sea stories, that's going to give me a head start on resurgences and emergences. But again, we will sort all of that out in the near future. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next stream.